Hi everyone, my name is Mary and I'm here today with Dr. Randolph Brooks, who is the Multicultural Programming and Outreach Coordinator in Counseling Services at SCSU. And today we're going to be talking about everything going on and regard to the pandemic, to the protests, to how people are feeling in all of this. So the title of this is Thrive in Crisis. So I guess to start off, what does that actually mean? Like how can we actually thrive in crisis?
Well, good morning, Mary. And to really just jump right into it, uh, to thrive, we're really talking about growing and developing while in crisis, crisis being a time of intense difficulty, trouble, or danger. So, really, what we're talking about is growing and developing in spite of the intense difficulty, trouble, and dangerous time that we find ourselves in. It's not easy to thrive in crisis, but it's not impossible either. You know, we have thrived in crisis throughout our entire lives. Typically, in our lives, we go from crisis to crisis to crisis. And yet, here we are, college students, graduate students, working professionals. So, to say that we can't thrive in crisis, that's not completely accurate. However, oftentimes we don't recognize what it is that we're doing, what it is we have to do to make sure we can thrive in these times.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really good point. And when people think of thriving, they're thinking of like a great feeling, like you're happy, you're like just having a grand old time. And that's not necessarily what thriving is. But like you mentioned, it's growing and developing. So, whereas this is a stressful time for a lot of people, it doesn't mean that thriving isn't happening. It doesn't mean that growing and developing isn't happening in spite of it. So, that was a really great point.
And I'd be willing to tell you that people are thriving and they don't even recognize that they actually are thriving. They just feel
Exactly.
as though I'm just barely making it. Well,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is, you're making it. So that by definition means you're thriving.
Yeah. That's like really encouraging. Like that alone, I feel like will help change perspectives a little bit. And yet, even in this time, like we mentioned, there's like stress, there's anxiety, and people are afraid. So like where is that fear coming from? Like why are we afraid?
Well, one of the primary reasons as to why people are afraid right now is because everything is uncertain. When are we going to go back to campus? Don't know. When's this pandemic going to be over? Don't know. What's going on with my financial aid and all that other stuff? Don't know. Am I going to be able to get this job this summer? Don't know. Can I go to the beach? Don't know. What about the mall? Am I going to be able to go out to my favorite restaurant for 4th of July? Maybe. You know, there are a lot of there's a lot of uncertainty right now. And so with that uncertainty, people aren't able to plan, they're not able to actively recognize what's coming down the road. So as a result, everything is just up in the air, everything is unstable, and that is a significant source of fear for a lot of people, especially if you're trying to plan for the fall semester. So you have some people who are saying, well, I'm planning on going back to campus and I was going to room with my best friend. But my best friend lives in Vermont. Well, is his best friend going to be able to come back to campus? Is the best friend even going to want to come back to campus if a lot of classes are still online? There's some people who are talking about going to graduate school at Southern, but they live in Massachusetts. Well, if classes are going to be online, are they going to then commute from Massachusetts, move into a place in New Haven, only to do online classes when they could save money and do online classes back at home? Now, we all know that the goal right now is to be on ground at the start of the fall semester. But how are we going to get there? All that stuff is unknown. And while the administration is figuring all that stuff out, there are a lot of people who are feeling as though they're kind of sitting in limbo right now because they're waiting for the answers from the administration. And so that waiting, that is a source of uncertainty. The stakes of all of this, again, is another source of uncertainty. What we can definitely say is that the administration is working on it. So we know that there will be some answers soon. The problem is they either may not be the answers we want or they're not going to be coming as quickly as we would like. So there's a lot of waiting, and that waiting, that uncertainty, that is a source of fear for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's That's really heavy, like that uncertainty, the anxiety that comes with that. And I've noticed in my life and the lives of like the people around me, just this, you're noticing all of your emotions all at once and you're feeling everything all at once, whether it's anxiety regarding all of that, and then you're bored at home, you're upset with everything happening. You're also afraid of everything happening. So there's a lot of different emotions. And when we feel unstable, like all of those emotions seem even stronger. And that's like really hard to cope with.
It is. And there are ways that we're going to bring this up a little bit later, but there are definitely ways that we can cope with a lot of this stuff. But one of the primary things for us to recognize is that there are a lot of things that are just outside of our control. And since they're outside of our control, what are we supposed to do with that? Nothing, because it's outside of your control. But it's important for us to then recognize what is within our control. We need to focus on those things. So for example, we're all aware of COVID-19 right now. But how much control do we actually have over this virus? None. There are some things that we can do, though. We can definitely practice social distancing. We can definitely practice good hygiene. Those are some things that are within our control that help us to grab a little bit of control in this crisis, because we're not going to go around and cure COVID right now. There are people working on it, and while they're working on it, we need to do our part to help flatten the curve, as we've heard before. And it's the same thing with these protests. There are some people who love the idea of going out and being on the front lines and marching. That is what works for you. Okay, do that. But for other people, that may not necessarily work for them. But what can you do? Where is your protest in all of this? For some, we're going to be behind the scenes doing social media. For others, it's success in a time of crisis. Success in a system in which isn't designed for you to succeed. So the notion is we have to recognize where we can operate our control in any situation. And as we are operating our control in those situations, that is our form of protest, but it's also our form of stability. And in these unstable times, that is key for us to recognize where we can operate our control and stability.
Yeah, building that self-awareness of understanding what you're feeling, or working to understand what you're feeling, because that is really a process and a journey to learn how to be able to do, and then challenging yourself. So what are different ways that in order to thrive, like there's that pushing that we kind of need to do? Like, how can we challenge ourselves?
There's a few ways that we can challenge ourselves. Now, one way is through having what's known as a difficult dialogue, meaning we have grown accustomed to operating within a particular sphere, an echo chamber, if you will, in which the ideas that we're encountering, the ideas that we're engaging with, are all ideas that we agree with. Sometimes we need that. Sometimes we just need that affirmation. We need that reaffirmation. But there are other times we need to actually challenge ourselves a bit. Sometimes you need to talk to that person that may not necessarily see eye to eye with you. But you're engaging in these conversations with the goal of listening and understanding, not with the goal of replying and debating somebody down. Those are extremely uncomfortable because you're hearing things that you don't agree with. You're hearing things that maybe even at your core you find problematic. However, it's important at times to engage in those conversations to better understand yourself, but to also understand the other side of the coin. The fact is, we all have to share this planet together. And so, since we all have to share this planet together, it's a good thing to actually talk to those people who you don't necessarily agree with in a cordial and respectful manner. It's easy to say right now, but as you get into it, it can be a little uncomfortable. However, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. And that's just one way of challenging ourselves. But there's also, as we were talking about earlier, that fear of that instability, sitting in that distress, just recognizing, okay, I'm in this pandemic. that I have no control over. What am I going to do about this? No, it just is. It's almost like the practice of yoga. Sometimes there are some yoga poses that are extremely comfortable, extremely easy to do. Like, I think it's called like lying child or something like that. We're just lying flat on the floor. Comfortable, easy, no problem. But then you have these other poses that are like you're doing like a handstand, and it's rather difficult. Now, in that practice, the goal is to be in that distress, to be there, and to be present of mind in those times. And that's the same thing now, being present in whatever situation that you're in, understanding what that situation is, understanding your lack of control in that situation, but being there anyway. Because the goal in some of these things is just to get through it. And that's in part what the goal is with this pandemic. It's here, and we just are going to get through it. But one thing you want to remember is that we are all here together. Now, there's been an old saying, we're all in this storm together. And I will rephrase that a little bit. While we're all in the same storm together, we are all in different boats. So what that means is your experience and my experience, we're going to be slightly different, but we're going to get through this together. Just like your faculty members, your staff members, everybody in this university, we're all experiencing this at the same time. So, as I was mentioning before, when we all have questions, we're going to get the answers to those questions as other people get those answers. So that means until they get an answer, we're not going to get an answer. And we can ask them, of course, and they may tell us, I don't know, because they actually don't know, not because they're trying to hide anything, but because they don't know. And that's important in this sort of scenario because it reminds us that we are still in the middle of this. As difficult as it is, and it is difficult, that's a part of the challenge. We are going to get through this together as a team. And finally, trying to develop what's known as a sense of anti-fragility. That's another way of challenging ourselves. What does that mean? It means, you're developing the capacity to, again, grow and thrive in this distress, to grow and thrive in this discomfort, because it's all uncomfortable. But as students, what is your goal? Your goal is still graduation. Even though we're at these times in which we're essentially feels like we're at a standstill, we still are trying to graduate. So even though we're going to work towards graduation in the worst of circumstances, and that's kind of what this is right now, it's probably the worst of circumstances, everyone is still working to graduate. And so our goal is to help you get to that process. And sometimes it will require doing some of those things that are really uncomfortable for us. So, for example, emailing professors, going to office hours when you can, taking some difficult classes in the less than ideal situations, but then doing what you need to in those situations to get stuff done. So, for example, no one really wants to take a math class right now, right? Now, some people do, but a lot of people don't. But in these situations, it's not easy. It's not easy to try to do a class online if you are someone who likes to be on campus and learning. However, are you going to stop taking classes until we get back to campus, and then you're going to start taking classes again? Probably not. You're going to try to work through this. And we have resources on campus. We have resources off campus to help us through those processes, because we recognize that this is not the ideal situation. This is less than ideal. It's probably the worst situation. But the goal is still graduation. You still are trying to get done with college, and we're still trying to help you get done with college. So in these worst of times, still moving forward, still hardening ourselves to what's going on around us, the volatility, the mistakes, the shocks. Going through all of that with the goal of success. Now, I have a definition of success. Mary has a definition of success. And everybody watching this has a definition of success. Those definitions are different for each of us. But the goal is still your success. So that's what we're really trying to do, is figuring out what is our goal of success and doing whatever it is that we can to achieve it.
That's really good. That was really helpful. Well done, Randolph. I have nothing to add to that. That was so good. So in these times, like whether we're talking about the protests, whether we're talking about COVID, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of feelings of feeling disconnected from other people, especially at the beginning of this pandemic, like missing friends, like not being able to see family, feeling that separation of that social life, those interactions that you've grown to like know and appreciate. And then you come to like this time of like the protests and all of these different issues like coming back to light or being re-emphasized, because honestly like they've been there for so many years. And there's this feeling of like we're so disconnected, and you've spoken about that a lot, about social interaction, about the importance of like community. But like, could you talk about that a little more? Like, what does it mean to connect in this time? Like, how can we use the different things that we have, the different technology factors that we have to connect with people more?
Well, no, being a human, we have a desire for social connection. No, that's just a part of us. And so, as you mentioned at the start of this pandemic, you're seeing people talk about how they haven't seen their best friend in weeks. Grandparents not being able to see their grandchildren and vice versa, or even spouses of first responders not being able to be together because the one partner is working in a hospital in the emergency room or something like that, and their concern is bringing coronavirus home to the family, so having to see each other through glass only. That sucks. There's no other way to describe it. It's just horrible. And even though we do have like video conferencing, we have phone calls, emails, it kind of works, but it's nowhere near the same. But then recognizing, well, what are the options that we really have? And so that's a part of that recognition of our control in these situations. We need social connection, however we can get it. The thing about it is, while we are looking for social connection, it's important to remember to be safe in these times. So making sure you're practicing your universal precautions, washing your hands for 20 seconds. No, don't forget that, people. It's been a while since we've heard it, but wash your hands for 20 seconds, hand sanitizer, using your mask, all of those things just to help reduce the spread of coronavirus. But then also recognizing that use what you have. So for some people, they are still trying to see each other, but they're going to remain 6 feet apart. If that's what you need, then, you need to be smart about it, because we want you to remain safe. The thing is, I am a fan of social connection. It's necessary, it's vital, but it's important to remain safe in it. Now, we also can't discount the importance of social connection, because there are some people that may say, I'm an introvert, all I need is my TV and my bed and a room full of books and I'm good. Now, let's be honest, you may feel good. But there will come a time where you're like, this isn't enough anymore. So it's about being in tune with yourself to recognize what you need at that time. Connection is important. Connection is vital. And there are ways of doing it while remaining safe.
Yeah. And I think that goes into our next point about routine. Like, before all of this happened, we had that routine of, for us, like going to campus, going to work, working with students, like talking to our coworkers, like that became a routine. And that looks completely different now. Those social interactions look different, and that includes like after work or before work, you went to the gym, you did X, Y, and Z, you went to your favorite coffee shop. Like, all of those different routines have been almost lost a little. And yet we've spoken before about like that importance of a routine. So I was wondering if you could just take some time to talk about that now.
Well, you're right. A routine is definitely important for us. One of the things that definitely happens, just if you, well, I don't know about you, but I remember when I was a kid, like I sound so old when I say that. Um, I used to love summer break. Summer break was great for the first month. But then month two hit, I'm like, okay, I'm bored. I'm bored. What am I going to do on board? The third month hit, I'm like, I'm kind of ready to go back to school now. The thing is, we need that routine to help us remain motivated, to remain active, to remain engaged. The thing about the routine that I didn't know when I was in fifth grade that I recognize now is that you can vary your routine. The goal of the routine isn't to say that you're going to have 50, 11 million things to do every day. The goal of the routine is to say, I have something that I am going to do. I have some sort of goal in place. Now, you can have the same routine for 1 week and then vary it up for the next week and then vary it up again. You can be very creative when it comes to your routine. There are certain things that you may want to hold pretty stagnant or pretty stable in your routine. Stable is better, not stagnant, stable. There are a few things you want to hold stable in your routine. So, for example, what time are you going to bed? What time are you going to wake up? Those things may be the things you want to remain stable. So you could say, for example, I'm going to go to sleep every night at 12:30, and I'm going to wake up every morning at 9. That's fine. That's great. What are you going to do after that? Well, I'm going to eat my breakfast, and maybe I'm going to go to the gym. Maybe I'll do some reading. Maybe I'll do some studying if you're working on either a summer class or preparing for some sort of exam this summer or in the fall. The idea of the routine is all about helping you get that stability and control that we talked a little bit about before. Because since there are so many things that are outside of our control, we have to then hone in on those things that are within our control. You can't control when you go to sleep and when you wake up. For the most part, you can control when you eat. For the most part, you can control when you decide to work out. For the most part, you can control when you talk to family and friends. No, for the most part, you definitely know that there are definitely situations and external factors that will influence how those things operate. But for the most part, these are some of the things that are within our control. The thing about it, I don't know your life. So there's more that you can or cannot control than I realize. So it's important that you check in with yourself to find out what is in my control and what's outside of my control. And focus on those things that are in your control. That is what you throw into your routine.
Yeah. So those were like great tips and strategies, like physically. Yeah. What about like mental rest? Like, what's the importance of that?
Man, mental rest is probably the key for self-care. But you're right, mental rest, because when we look at it, again, I'm gonna sound old, but when I was coming up, you know, I'll be honest, right? There was no sort of social media, so I didn't know what was going on in the world around me unless I actively took steps to figure it out. Unless I actively took steps to find out what was going on. Now, you can go to your phone just to check the time. You just want to know what time is it, and before you know it, you get inundated with all this other information that you weren't looking for. You know, who's protesting where, what's happening next, what's next, what's the other thing of police brutality. No, there's so much information coming, and it gets to be overwhelming. So being able to unplug from some of that, to get a break, because it's easy to get overwhelmed because there's so much happening all the time. So when it comes to the idea of mental rest, it's being able to not check out from society, no, but it's to give yourself a break because it's all coming and it seems like it's just an overwhelming. And that's just kind of a phrase that I've been hearing from people, over these past couple of weeks. I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's overwhelming. In part because we haven't been able to get a break from it, So when it comes to mental rest, getting a break, decompressing, and probably, most likely, possibly, yes, do this. Take a break, but, find a way to unplug. So, for example, there are some people who will leave their phone just for a couple of hours, maybe go for a walk, maybe just have a solid conversation with somebody that's not about anything, just regular. How have you been doing? Checking in with your friends and your loved ones, being able to have a nice meal or even a drink and not be engaged with social media at that time. Now, let's be honest, that is a luxury that some of us don't have. But at the same time, again, we start looking at aspects of your control. What are those things that you can do? So for example, if it's a case of, again, leaving your phone, turning you off the computer, and just listening to some music. Just, again, pulling yourself away from all this stuff that just keeps bombarding us left and right and center. And so really when it comes to that mental rest, we know how important sleep is. You need 6.5 to 8.5 hours of sleep to function, period. But you also need to rest from media as well to actively function. Now that's not to say to completely unplug and disconnect from everything, because that is a mistake. But it is important for us to find that space that we can breathe. And that's what a lot of this is. You just need to breathe.
Yeah. I think we don't always realize how much we're carrying, and we fail to see like that we carry so much, like mentally and emotionally, that we see something, we hear something, and we think like, I'll just forget about it, or I'll just move on, or I'll think about it later. But it comes with us. Like, it's that heaviness that we feel, that weariness almost, that's like deeper than like a physical exhaustion. It's like that, like you're tired on the inside. And that's a thing that I've noticed a lot in whether it's through social media or talking to friends, like that feeling of like, I'm just like, my heart is tired, like I'm just exhausted. And that like ties into all of this, and talking about self-care, the importance of physical rest and mental rest. Yeah, like what other things can we be doing to improve our self-care strategies?
Well, one of the first things when it comes to self-care, and this is, kind of something that I've kind of revert back to, is I just have to admit, life is hard. It's hard being here. Now, the reason for that isn't so I can just sit and complain. It's like, oh, life's hard, life's hard. But no, but it's a recognition of life is hard. So to do life, you have to work hard. And we're all doing life. So that means that we are all working hard. But part of that is to just say, you deserve a break. You've earned it. You've gotten here. You've gotten to this point. You didn't get here by accident. You've earned this. So it's important to acknowledge the work that you've done, as well as the need for this break. And when it comes to taking breaks, you can do a myriad of things. People may say their version of self-care is to go get an ice cream sandwich. Other people's version of self-care may be to go for a walk in the park. Some people, they want to go play with their dog or play with their cat. Self-care means a lot. There are a couple of key factors to self-care, though. One of the important factors, and to me this is probably the most important, is you can't regret it. Meaning, some people may be studying for an exam or something like that and say, I need self-care, so I'm going to stop studying for my exam and I'm going to play my video games. Okay, that's what you want to do. But then you end up playing your video games for 5 hours. And then as a result, you have not been able to study for your exam, and the exam is tomorrow. When you get to that exam, you end up regretting it. So the first thing about self-care, you can't regret it. Because if you regret whatever it is that you've done, it now takes away from the self-care that you've already done. So when it comes to your self-care, you can't regret it. The other thing is it has to be something that is under your individual control, deliberate, and self-initiated. The thing about self-care, it's intentional. You are intentionally taking this time to play with your dog. And you're going to be there with your dog, and that's it. You're not going to worry about the exam you're taking. You're not going to worry about this or that. You're going to just be there in that space with your dog because this is your relaxation time. This is the time when you can spend with your dog and just be. That's self-care. For other people, it's I'm going to have a nice meal with my loved ones, and I'm going to just be there in the meal. I'm not going to be checking my phone. I'm not going to be doing this or that. I'm just going to be here. That's one of the hallmarks of self-care. I am going to be intentional about how I'm spending my time with this situation, whatever that can be. It can be as simple as, again, laying in your bed, listening to some music. It can be, for some, just going for a drive down the road, just getting some me time. The thing about it, again, you want it to be something that is intentional and within your control. You also want it to be something that you do not regret. You want to remain safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key part. That's the key to a lot of this, is you want to remain safe, and you also want to remember to be kind to yourself. So self-care, it's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be something that you enjoy doing, that you do not regret. It's a chance to rejuvenate yourself. It's a chance to get away. The thing about it is, this is something that is for everyone. You don't want to wait too long in between crisis to crisis and have no self-care. Self-care is something that you can do every day, even if it's only for 10 minutes. Now, you don't want it to be a case in which you're using it as an escape from your responsibilities, because that's no longer self-care. Self-care is an intentional act of rejuvenation, not an act of escapism.
Yeah. And with a lot of the different things that you mentioned, and that word intentionality, like, it goes, I guess you can sum it up to, like, we have choices that we need to make. And when we were talking about this video, like, you brought up a really great point about, like, thriving being a choice. So share that with us now.
Well, the thing is, you're correct. Thriving is a choice. Even though this video may have only been a few minutes long, we will have ongoing discussions about thriving and about these choices. These are choices and discussions that have been taking place for hundreds of years. Now, it's our choice to take this opportunity to step into this and have these difficult conversations when it comes to healthcare, unemployment, and in this opportunity that we have to step into this, it's a choice. The choice that you're talking about, the choice to thrive, it is a choice to push through difficulty. We've all heard the analogy of the coal and diamond. If you ever heard it, it goes a little something like this. A coal is, a rock you pull out of the ground, you burn it for fuel and all that stuff. However, if you take that rock and you apply enough pressure for a long enough period of time, that rock becomes a diamond. It's almost like gold. Gold being pulled out of the ground, it's really nice. But when that gold is refined by fire, that's when that gold becomes valuable. And it's the same thing when it comes to thriving. We are being put under a lot of pressure and hit with a lot of fire. And what's going to come out of that? Diamond and refined gold. You are diamonds. You are refined gold. You're under that pressure right now, but as you push through, you start to shine. And that's the thing about all of this that's happening right now. This is our refining period for SCSU. We're going to be refined by this process to be stronger members of society, to be stronger students on the other side. Now, is it comfortable? No. Pressure is not comfortable. Refinement is not comfortable, but it's necessary for strength and growth.
So good. Thank you so much, Dr. Brooks. That was really helpful. You've put into language a lot of things that people have been thinking about and people have been feeling. So thank you all for watching. I hope that this helped you a little bit, even if it's to bring to mind different things that you want to work on, like self-care, or different perspectives that you want to work on developing. So thank you once again for watching, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you very much. You all have a good day.